Hey guys, what's going on? This is your old pal CHH. So today we're going to do top 10 horror movies of the 2000s. I made my list for the 70s. That one was so tough, I couldn't believe it. So we're going to do the 70s after the 2000s. And after that, we may play around with, the best movie of each year, that sort of thing. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And honestly, this one was kind of tough too. The fact is, there are movies from the 2000s that you, watching this, could say, well, this is one of my favorites. It's got to be on this list. And then other people will say, no, that movie's terrible. I promise there are going to be divisive movies in the 2000s, no matter who you are or what your list is. So without further ado, let's get right the hell into it. All right, guys, so coming in at number 10 for me, this was a great theater experience. I thought this movie was so good. I'm talking about The Strangers. Now, I have gone back and watched The Strangers Pray at Night and that really bad one that came out a couple years ago. The Strangers just worked, and I'll tell you why it worked. The relationship between the guy and the girl in the beginning, I think the girl was actually Steven Tyler's daughter, by the way, was so compelling about their relationship and how she didn't want to get married and all that. You were so bought into the movie on that basis alone that when shit started hitting the fan, you couldn't believe it. Like, you were already keyed up. It was the best opening of a horror movie I'd seen in so long. It was so good. I remember it just really captivated the audience. And when those suckers started showing up at the house, I remember people getting up and running out of the theater. The experience, the theatrical experience of The Strangers was outstanding. It's one of the best horror movies of the 2000s. It's got to be, right? It's coming in at number 9, rest in peace, Tony Todd. But the reality is this movie just set off a huge precedent and created a franchise. I'm talking about Final Destination. I love the OG, especially that plane sequence in the beginning. Like, it's palpable how scary it is. Like, what's going to happen? Is there going to be this huge wreck? Is the plane going to crash? It's really, really good stuff. Some kids say that the sequels are better, and I might even agree with that to a certain extent. But I think when you look at this whole thing, you have to give credit to the first Final Destination movie. I mean, there were names from this that are legendary, names that would become legendary, and it's just, it birthed a franchise that's still going today. I love the Final Destination series. I love the good, the bad, and the ugly with the Final Destination films, including the ones that came out that were like 3D and stuff that people hated. I liked all of them. I just thought they were all, junk food. But I think the first one is a real classic. So I got nothing but love for Final Destination. All right, guys, coming in at number 8, I got to throw it to Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects. Now, my wife was telling me, why would you not put House of 1,000 Corpses on there? Well, listen, I'm trying to be fair. The reality is, yeah, I love House of 1,000 Corpses more than anything. But you watching this probably like The Devil's Rejects even more. As a matter of fact, I would say out of 100 people, it would probably be 60-40, maybe even 70-30 of Devil's Rejects over House of 1,000. And listen, even the most vicious Rob Zombie hater will probably say out of all his films, yeah, The Devil's Rejects was good. And it just works. I mean, it's the perfect environment for the kind of characters that Rob likes to do. And when he has him in that fishbowl, it's just a magic thing. I think The Devil's Rejects is a true classic. I really do. No matter who I show that movie to, they can say, that was intense, but boy, I was into that. So, and I got to see it in the theater when they did 3 from Hell a couple years ago. I went on the night where they played Devil's Rejects before it. And looking back, I really savored that experience again. So seeing The Devil's Rejects in the theater, God almighty, it really is that good. Coming in at number 7, guys, gotta throw this one to The Descent. I'm sure you guys remember that movie. The Descent is amazing. Got a character that went through some loss in the beginning, some tragic loss. It's actually an amazing opening scene. And then going into this cave is just, boy, it gives me anxiety thinking about it. I would never do it. Now, all I see on TikTok and everything is about these people going in these little tiny caves. They're nuts. But Descent really shows what happens when you just don't know what could be down there and what could happen. And it's actually a really riveting movie. I think The Descent is a classic as well. I love this movie a lot. And it seems like whenever I show this movie to friends and family, they always give me the big thumbs up. So I think it's safe to say that The Descent belongs in the top 10. Coming in at number 6, guys, I'm about to throw y'all with a big curveball. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning. That's right, not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you know me, no surprise to you whatsoever. If you don't know me that well and you came across this video, let me explain. So, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original film. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite horror movies of all time. I think it's the greatest horror movie. I don't like when Leatherface is more of a brute, almost slasher-esque style character. I like the more, what's going on, what do I do, I'm scared kind of character. Now, I can let the rules bend a little bit, but it still has to be in some sort of a vein of what I like. Now, for my tastes, I think the beginning portrayed everything better than the 03 film did, in terms of the color palette of the film, in terms of the characters, in terms of Leatherface himself. I really like Leatherface a lot more in the beginning rather than what the 03 movie presented. And I think the beginning just works. I think it's a great, great horror movie. Not a great remake, not a great 2000s movie. I think Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning is plain and simply a great horror movie. It just works. I think the balance of this one is sensational. So I love this movie with a passion. I've always been a big fan of the beginning, and I'll always say I prefer it over 03. And when it comes to 2000s movies, yeah, it's one of my favorites. Coming in at number 5, I really hope some of you have seen this movie. It's a little bit of a deeper cut, but if you haven't, it's amazing. Number 5 is a movie called Frailty. Now, Frailty has an amazing cast, and it's one of Bill Paxton's best movies. The plot of Frailty is just amazing. When I saw this movie as a kid, it bothered me for days. Frailty is about a dad who comes home and says, well, kids, God has told me that demons are walking the earth and we have to go kill them. And the guy actually gets in the car and goes to these places and kills these people. Is dad losing his mind? Is there really a God telling him to do this? Well, you got to watch the movie to find out. But Frailty is amazing. And I think it went under the radar. It's not even a movie that has a great release today, and that's a shame. I think Kino needs to do a 4K of Frailty now, quite frankly. One of the best movies I've ever seen. When I saw this as a kid, my mom got it because of the cast. You know, McConaughey and Bill Paxton. But I didn't think it was going to be that much of a thing when I looked at it at first, but when the movie came on, it bothered me for days. I love this movie. If you haven't seen Frailty, guys, you are never going to experience a movie like this before or again. So go out and watch Frailty. It's really that good. Number 4, guys, this is one that could possibly get me in a heap of trouble. The movie Silent Hill. I never played the games, nothing like that. But when I saw this movie, so many things bothered me. Like the guy in the bathroom that has his arms and legs tied behind him with the barbed wire, and he's got the key in the mouth, and those disgusting sounds and faces he does, to the big pyramid head. The scene where the cop and the mom are in that room and he reaches his hand in there and he's trying to grab her. It just rips my heart out. That movie to me is amazing. I think Silent Hill is the best like CGI horror movie ever. That world of Silent Hill to me is just amazing. I'm always going to be a big fan of Silent Hill. I didn't like the sequel. Some people say, well, Christian, that one's more like the video game, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't care about the video games. I never really played the video games. But to me, Silent Hill is one of the best horror movies of the 2000s. And in terms of like CGI horror movie, because there's clearly a lot of CGI in Silent Hill. Undeniably great. I love it. I think Silent Hill is legitimately good and legitimately scary. And those guys in the hazmat suits that run around and she's hiding, just the stomping you hear freaks me out. Huge fan. I love Silent Hill. Coming at number 3, I have to throw this one to an all-time classic. One of the best. Changed the world. That movie is definitely Saw, the original Saw. I think this movie is a trailblazer. I understand that, you know, it's a subgenre that's not for everybody, and I get that. But for me, when I saw this movie, I was just dumbfounded that it was made, because I had never really seen a movie like this before. In terms of a plot twist, seeing John Kramer get up at the end, it blew me away. But the performances and the tension between Lee Winnell and Princess Bride, the actor, I forget his name at this time, I mean, I was just like a fly in the wall. I felt the tension in the room watching it. I know Saw isn't really known for performances and things like that, but the original Saw to me just is incredibly just tense and just captivating. I mean, the series obviously went in a lot of directions, and there's a lot of stuff that went on, but I think the first Saw is a classic. It was huge too. I mean, if you were there for that period, I was in high school at that point. I mean, I just remember that movie was so big, just incredible. So I gotta have that at number 3. All right, guys. So at number 2, going to the early 2000s, I'll never forget losing sleep for days at this movie. I mean, literally days. I'm talking about Jeepers Creepers. This movie scared the shit out of me. I mean, when you see the creeper throwing the bodies down the pipe, and just the car chase scene, which obviously I know now has been a ripoff of a Unsolved Mysteries episode. You know, I get that. But the fact is, when I was a kid watching this movie, that opening scene just freaked me out. And then when you saw the bodies getting dumped down into that, you know, that cave that the creeper made. I credit a lot of it, too, to Justin Long's performance. He was so freaked out when he went down in there, and he's looking around at everything. Mortifying. But the thing that made me lose sleep as a kid was when he flares out his face at the police station. I lost it. I can see it right now. I can feel that feeling I had when I was a kid. Just ruined my life. Jeepers Creepers to me was probably at that point the scariest horror movie I'd ever watched. I think I was like, 10 or 11 when I saw that in 2001. Truly freaked me out. Just ruined my life. So, yeah, freaked me out. And I know all the stuff with the director. I am able to separate the art from the artist in that sense because I see film as a very big collaborative effort. It's ridiculous to have to say, of course, I think Victor Salva is an awful human being. But I got to say it because otherwise people will say, did you know about Victor Salva? So I got to say that. But my point is, Jeepers Creepers scared my whole family. I love that movie. All right, guys, and coming at number 1, probably one of the most innovative type of horror movies I'd ever seen. And one of my favorite performances, and I'm a little biased because he's got my name, Christian. But I'm talking about American Psycho. Yeah, this movie's just stood the test of time, man. I think this is a classic. And the thing about American Psycho is I don't think it's... Some of the movies I've talked about in this list, they inherently bring you back to a time of the 2000s when you watch them. But American Psycho, I think, just feels timeless. And I think American Psycho is a classic. It's one of the great horror performances with Christian Bale. And the dialogue is fantastic. And this movie just works. It's funny. It's scary. It's emotional. It does everything. And it could have fallen flat on its face, but Christian Bale killed it. So I'm a big fan of American Psycho. I think it's one of the best horror films. And it breaks out of its 2000s timeline. So that's the number 1 for me. There it is. That was my list. Kind of tough. There's some movies I wanted to put on that I didn't make it on the list, like Session 9. I've grown to have a fondness of that movie because I've forced myself to watch it so many times. But that's my list. I'm interested to see what you guys think of this list. Let me know down below, guys. Let me know your list. Thank you for watching. Your old pal CHH. I'll see y'all on the 70s very, very soon. Huge, giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind-the-scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.